Alright, everyone, welcome back. So, somebody was commenting on my YouTube about good YouTube content. And I speak of technical content and advice. And he was saying that this is why technicians in the business can't make a living on flat rate. And I do agree with this guy. He's saying that an example was that I gave a technician a specific duty to do. He's been around the procedure. I asked him to watch my YouTube video on how to do Hyundai EPS insulator, and he didn't follow directions. And some people don't have the vision I call, and it's a vision that you have in your head. And I think people who really have that mechanical breakdown say he didn't build it right. So if you build something, you know how to disassemble it in your mind and your eyes before you actually put your hands on it, because you've already been down that road and you've done it so many times. But when you can see somebody else's engineering and it's completed, and then you can look at it and then you can blow it apart in your mind, and this is how I see things, you don't necessarily have to take I'm just going to use this, take everything apart to gain access to a piece that's in the center, if you follow what I'm saying. And it's a vision that the top level guys have. So you have the guy that's by the book for everything. He takes every bolt off, he takes every bracket, he takes every clip, he takes every bolt to the parts washer, he wire brushes every part, he Loctites every part, he torques down every part by the torque spec. And this is the guy who cannot beat book time. And that's a fact. So there is a procedure for a lot of different things in a book time and how you do things, and everyone has a little bit different of a way that they do things. I've taught technicians the most efficient way to do brake jobs, and some retain that information, some do not. But the ones who retain it can do brake jobs faster than others, using the same tools in the same environment, the same lifts, blah, 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 without being distracted by other things. So if we take technician A, B, and C, and the one that follows my procedure 100% all the time, uses the tools that I use for those jobs, he is by far the most efficient at doing that job, and accurate, because I strip it down to this is how you do it 100% all the time, without torquing down everything, without wire brushing everything, without painting and manicuring. That's not necessary all the time. Then you take technician B, who doesn't use the same tools, is not following the same procedures, and he's 50% longer. Then you take technician C, who is not using those tools as technician B, as technician A, right? And forget it. He will never make any money doing brake jobs the way that he's doing them. We're not saying anything bad. And sometimes it's because they can't see this, and I'm going to give you an example. So if I'm doing a hub bearing on a vehicle, that's a bolt-in bearing, not a press-in, right? Because press-in requires more disassembly, and that's why they have fancier tools out today to where you can disassemble less and press them on the car. You can do that. But before that, we didn't have those tools. Maybe some dealerships did, but aftermarket didn't. So bolt-in wheel bearings, it's usually very, very easy to do, provided you don't have rust and corrosion. And where we're at, rust and corrosion is the nightmare factor for us. It changes everything from trying to get the bolts off, from trying to get the thread lock out of the OEM threads, the corrosion, the dirt. Once you get the bolts out, if you're lucky to even get the bolts out, that it's seized to the knuckles with corrosion and multiple different corrosion factors, from aluminum, cast iron, steel, on and on and on. So corrosion for us is the make or break for the efficiency factor. But then you have to know how to work around that with your experience and what works for different corrosions and different vehicles. So for me, if I'm doing a hub bearing, we're going to eliminate that there's no corrosion. It's, a lower mileage vehicle. and it's not a corrosion belt vehicle. It's, there's no rust. Then you still have Loctite to deal with, right? And this is where some of the technicians who don't know. So for me, if I grab all the right tools that I know that are efficient and fast, I will just remove the caliper with the brake pads and bracket all together by removing just 2 bolts from the bracket. And then I will hang the caliper, or I'll place the caliper, and then I will go and service the axle nut, the wheel speed sensor if it's applicable. Remember, there's no rust. And then I will go to the wheel bearing bolts, either there's 3 or 4 in most cases, and then I will service that job. Well, I watch other technicians, so I'm technician A. We're going to watch technician B do the same job. Take both bolts out of the caliper, take the brake pads and hardware off, take the bracket off. Now he's gained access to the rotor. He's going to remove the rotor. I didn't talk about that with technician A, but just keep going. He removes the rotor. He's not using the same tools as me. And then he's down to the axle nut and the wheel bearing. So you follow me? Look at all the extra steps that technician B took to do that same job. Now, we're not talking about complexities and adversity in doing the job. We're just talking about steps. So when I look at that job, I'm like, I blew it apart. I looked at the new part. I looked at what I'm dealing with. Sorry, my hand was in the way. And I'm saying, I don't have to remove all these parts. I don't need to do 5 steps when I can just do it in 2. Or if there's 20 steps, can I do it in 5, right? So we're going to say technician C, right? So technician B has different tools than technician A. Technician A has the most efficient tools and experience and knowledge and that vision. Technician B, we just told you what he would do. Now technician C doesn't have the same tools, doesn't have the same experience, doesn't have that same vision, right? Because technician B didn't have the same vision I did. Technician C doesn't have the same vision I did on blowing apart the mechanical part in his mind. And maybe that comes from drafting when I was in high school. Not really sure where this comes from, so I've always been very mechanically inclined. Technician C takes both bolts off for the caliper. He takes the caliper off, doing it the long way. Technician C is taking the brake pads out and the hardware out, and he's taking the bracket off, and then he's fighting around with the brake rotor because he doesn't have the right tool to get the Torx bit or Phillips out. Now he's wasting more time there because he doesn't have that foresight when he walks over to the job that this is everything I need to do this job, because he probably doesn't have everything he needs to do the job because he didn't make the investment to make himself more efficient. So then he has to go and say, hey, can I borrow this? Can I do that? Can I do this? So now the efficiency from technician A, technician B, and technician C is from fantastic, could be better, I could be faster, and then completely technician C is never ever going to make any money doing the job. We're not saying anything bad, because he doesn't have that vision, doesn't have the tools and the knowledge and experience. So he finally gets the rotor off. He may or may not have an axle nut to fit the axle, and then he goes back to the 3 or 4 bolts on the axle nut. And remember, there's no corrosion. So you can see that what I'm saying is, I saw like, okay, I stripped it down. It's a 5-step process. I stripped it down to a 3-step process, and we're just say that, right? 3-step. That's technician A. Technician B with a 5-step process still went through the 5-step process, just wasn't as efficient. Technician C still went through the same 5-step process, and technician B didn't strip it down. Technician C didn't strip it down to a faster way of doing it, and then technician C didn't have all the tools and experience, and it took him 3 times longer than technician A, and half the time, if not a little bit more than half the time, than technician B. And that goes for like intake manifolds and dashboards and things like that. I just see how they just go together without really seeing how they go together. And then, I'll have something suspended with, 15 or 20 other steps just so I can get to where I'm going without having to go through the 15 or 20 other steps. And my point with that is, there's plenty of guys out there that will take you through every nook and cranny of a job that is not efficient. Is it right or wrong? I don't believe that there's any right or wrong. It doesn't make him right or wrong, and it doesn't make me right or wrong or a hack. And there's plenty of A-techs out there that see things that way, and it comes from experience. So they can refine, even to this day, refine their shortcuts, we're going to call them, or their vision of how things done, because they've done that same job 60 or 80 times, right? And then some things have to be complete. Everything needs to come off and be done, but not all the time. So it's just some vision that I want to tell you, that the way that people think, right? So an A-tech that's on flat rate, who's killing it, there's a reason why. It's not because he's just getting fed all the easy work. He has a system, he has the tools, he has the efficiency, he has that vision. And then once he gets to that point and says, man, that was a 7-hour job, I did it in 3. Can I become more efficient at it? So now it becomes more of a challenge, just like me. He's like, all right, I can do this EPS insulator without any interruptions. This is me, without any interruptions, from start to finish in 20 minutes. That's me. 20 minutes, I can do that job. And I actually had interruptions, and I showed Caleb that I did the job in 20 minutes, fixed all the mistakes of unnecessary things taken apart, dressed the whole car, put it back together, and I'm like, 20 minutes where another technician was fumbling for an hour. 20 minutes. That job should pay 3 hours, tearing out the steering column, removing the plastics, test drive, verification, on and on and on. But for me, I've done it so many times without doing the long process that I refined that process even more for me, saying, well, I went from 30 steps in that process to 10 steps, and I probably have it stripped down to even less than 10 steps in that job. And maybe I'll do another video on that. It may be 50 processes or 50 movements or 50 different things I have to do. But I will tell you, I've stripped it down to a quarter of what it should pay. And that's the difference. But I looked at it one way and I'm like, okay, it pays this. I did that. And I grab all the tools that I need to do that job every time with the specialty tools. So if you don't have the specialty tools, or know how to use your specialty tools, because some people have plenty of specialty tools and then some guys don't, that's the difference in the investment in making yourself a technician that can make big bucks on flat rate versus a technician who cannot. So the investment, the experience, the knowledge, and the challenge for yourself. But it's just weird. For me, I see something, I blow it apart, envision, I kind of look at what I'm dealing with, and I'm saying, do I need to remove everything to gain access to where I'm going? And sometimes, like I said, it has to be that way. Does every bolt need to be polished and lubricated and Loctited and torqued down to spec? Certain times it does require all that, and then other times it's not necessary. So it's definitely, training, vision, being advised. But I gave you the 3 technician scenario. I'm sure there's another 4 technician scenario out there that someone can give me. But we'll just strip it down to, the basics of us doing a bolt-in wheel bearing on how to do that. But technician A, I showed you how you blow it apart in your mind and saying, okay, I'm just doing a hub bearing. Do I need to take everything off of this car to do a bolt-in hub bearing? And for technician A, who's the most efficient and fastest and experienced and has the specialty tools and the faster tools, can do it in 20 minutes with no rust. And then technician B is an hour, and technician C is 2 to 3 hours. So I hope this helps somebody out there. It really is. You have to have that vision. Thanks for watching.